How do you get an excerpt to sound like a perfect little polished gem so that it can advance at an audition? Like how clean these accents in Porgy and Bess are and how exactly equidistant all the sixteenths are, or how exactly shaped the notes of this Scheherazade excerpt are here. The answer is self-recording. When an audition committee is listening to you play, they're going to be simultaneously listening to each musical element like time, rhythm, pitch, accuracy, dynamics, tone, phrasing, everything. And I don't care who you are, it's very hard to figure out how to have super high levels of each of these things in your interpretation all at the same time. So self-recording is the strategy that makes this possible. I did a major self-recording phase myself during my audition prep for both of my winning auditions at the New World Symphony and for the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, and also before recording my Delacruz album. So I want to show you how to do this right so you can just sound so much better than you would have, and possibly better than everyone else coming to the audition. And believe me, no one does this right. So this is going to be the first in a series of 3 videos called The Complete Guide to Self-Recording. In today's video, I'll go over an overview of the self-recording process. The second video is about all the gear you need to set up for effective self-recording. And in the third video, I'll go over a step-by-step guide that you can follow to do it right. I also made a new self-recording workbook that you can download and take to your practice room so that you can do it yourself. And you could download that at robknopper.com/self-recording. It includes detailed step-by-step instructions of how to self-record, a guide to all the gear you need to self-record, the audition rubric, and then the audition cheat sheet so that you can see how self-recording fits into my bigger audition preparation process. Again, the link for that is at robknopper.com/self-recording. So here's how I discovered that self-recording was so effective. In college, I was preparing for the Buffalo Philharmonic Timpani audition. They required a pre-screening audition tape, and my teacher said that it was going to be really hard to make it through the tape round, and my excerpts had to be totally spotless and uncuttable. So I was working on these 6 or so excerpts really intensely to try to get the most clean, perfect little versions of them, humanly possible. So I'd set up in the dance studios at school, I'd turn on my Zoom recorder, and then I'd walk over and play until I thought I got a great take. And then I'd come back, listen, and then I'd try to fix everything that was wrong and get an even better take. Every week I'd bring in my best recordings from the sessions, and I'd play these excerpts on a speaker for my teacher, Joe, and he would tell me, "No, it's not good enough. You're capable of better than this, Rob." So I'd feel disappointed and frustrated, and then I'd go ahead and try to get even better takes. And it's hard. It's hard to get a really good take with nothing wrong. It's a balancing act to keep everything in mind. You're trying to keep the time stable, but not forget the nice phrasing. You're trying to remember how to cleanly, play these grace notes, show a jovial character, and then you listen back and you forgot something totally obvious, like I forgot the ritardando here or something. But if you can push through and actually get a single great take of an excerpt, that is really an incredible accomplishment. And one, fluky great take leads to another, which leads to you being able to play that great take or something very close to it in an audition situation. I learned this very soon after making the Buffalo tape, because after I sent the tape in, I started working on the rest of the audition list, to prepare for the live round. And the excerpts that I had already polished for the tape were at this really super amazing level, like so clean, so easy. I didn't have to try to make it sound good. And the other stuff was just as bad and just as hard as it always had been. There was this huge gulf between the tape excerpts and the other ones, and the only difference was that I had done this really intense, zoomed in, self-recording work. So it showed me loud and clear that self-recording, it's not just for audition tapes, it's for everything. And that's what I eventually decided and did for all the auditions that I won. So I go through this methodical system of self-recording for every single note of the repertoire to make sure that I've at least gotten one super awesome take that I'm satisfied with. So actually, not only did I do it for my auditions, but lots of my students have used this process to win their jobs too. And even now, a couple musicians who are now in the Met Orchestra have told me after they won their audition that they used my self-recording system, including the gear and the setup and the steps, when they were preparing for their audition, which has been really super cool to hear. So why is self-recording different and better than regular practicing? And really, it's only one tiny difference. In traditional practice, you do 3 steps. You do step 1, play and listen. Step 2, problem solve. And then step 3, repeat. So traditional practice. Say you're playing Carnival Overture on tambourine. You're playing something and you're like, oh, that sounds a little bit wonky. I'm going to fix this. I'll try not playing these two notes closer together or whatever. I'm playing and I'm listening at the same time. And based on what sounds wrong, I'll try to fix it. In self-recording, you just separate that first step, play and listen, into two different parts. So step 1, play. Step 2, listen. Step 3, problem solve. And step 4, repeat. You can't do your best listening when you're playing at the same time. It's just like, texting and driving. If you do both at the same time, you can't do either one as well. Self-recording eliminates multitasking, and it allows you to first fully focus all of your attention on the act of playing. Set yourself up. Draw your eyes to your hands or to the tip of your sticks. Think about the physical and the mental act of execution and perform. And then switch. Now that you have the recording, you can change your focus to listening and analysis. I'll explain this more in depth in the third video of this series. Because you're eliminating multitasking, you're listening to yourself from a whole new perspective. Self-recording is the process that can earn you the most yes votes in your audition because it forces you to solve the right problems. If I'm doing like a traditional style of practice, I'm playing and I'm listening at the same time. I have certain things that I listen for instinctively by default. I tend to focus on like time and rhythm first. Maybe for you it's intonation because that's what your teacher always harped on or whatever. But recording yourself opens up a whole new world. Wow, I didn't know that my rests were so long. I didn't know that my phrasing sounded flat because I was focused on making this little grace note accurate. What you're doing is you're preemptively solving the problems that the committee is going to hear that you wouldn't hear naturally. You're giving yourself a chance to hear all the other problems when they would have been completely invisible. One other great thing about self-recording is that it forces you to decide your musical vision. There's lots of these little musical decisions to be made all the time. Where should the peak of this phrase be? What's the actual difference in forte versus fortissimo for this part? How am I going to shape crescendo? Like, is it going to be diagonal? Is it going to be curved? How do I arrive at the note afterwards? If I don't force myself to decide, then I'll just keep being indecisive and switching back and forth. None of those things are wrong, so I just tend not to make the decision. Self-recording is the time I tell myself that I have to decide right now. Which one sounds better? Figure it out now. And if I can't decide what I like better, then I just record both ways, listen back, A/B test, and choose my favorite. You know how people tell you to take risks in auditions? Self-recording is the time you can start taking risks and then seeing how they sound. So, exaggerate a phrase, contrast your tone, show a new color, stretch out a rubato, add some articulation, and then listen back and pretend you're on the committee. See what you think. Your excerpt and your musical instinct will just get more compelling and more, high level with a vision each time you repeat through the self-recording process. Self-recording is an incredibly difficult, frustrating process. It's like taking off all your clothes and looking in the mirror. It's easier just not to face the truth about how you look or how you sound. Many of my students want to give up. They say it's humiliating to listen to and acknowledge their mistakes, and I know exactly how that feels. Like, I went through that so much. So I have to keep telling them, stick with it. If you are willing to emotionally persevere through this kind of intense analysis, then you really have a chance to gain an advantage on a huge percentage of candidates coming to your next audition. You have no idea. Like, it's crazy how serious musicians will just skip this step because honestly, it's hard and it hurts your brain, to hear all these little mistakes. All right, there's obviously a lot more to say about self-recording, which I'll go into in the next couple videos. But if you want to go ahead and get started, you can download the step-by-step instructions and my self-recording gear guide and some other stuff at robnopper.com/self-recording. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and then next we're going to talk about what gear to choose and how to set it all up. I'll see you there.